evening. Many of you know me. My name is Eric Cecil. I'll be reading some of my work tonight. It's about 9 p.m. on a Saturday night, and I've got some water with me. Got an Arnold Palmer with me. So let's throw down. All right, so for this first poem that I'm going to read, it actually has not been published. It's pretty much finished, I would say, and I'll try to read it slowly. It'll be a difficult read because there's a lot of similar word endings, but we'll go ahead and get started. I heard this poem when I was listening to the Beatles song Across the Universe, so this title of the poem is Across the Universe. The Joker dances so ridiculously, boastfully telling juvenile jokes so endlessly, to people astray, madly laughing, clapping about their own demise. All I'm asking is for a sunrise, casting loving people with tears of light raining from welcoming eyes. God, why are you shyly hesitating, procrastinating, putting off what can be done today for an anxious tomorrow, delaying this inevitability while so many are fearing, hating, chasing, and racing humanity to an early grave? Complex, despairing, staring problems facing us will be solved by imagination, words, and ideas freely flowing from unfettered minds, like whimsical snow falling, fastly frosting sunny winter days. Ancient aggression has grown old. Fear is by its side, trying to keep its anger alive. Pride is barely holding on, desperately dying. The promise of peace unbroken will not be denied. Evil is bowing down, leering, sneering, no longer steering humanity to rocks and waterfalls. Shooting through the unknown expanse of love's universe, cheaply disguised lies are aflame in a fiery hearse, bursting amongst the waltzing stars into endless depths of seas of silence. With angels looking down, let the trumpet sound and the music play. The final word on war didn't come from a politician, pundit, a stockbroker, sanity, or normality, but from a logical impossibility, from an internal hopeful mystery, from love's silent suffering, from a child-remembered dream, from an unbreakable quiet promise, from the scoffer's cool disbelief, from passive pleading prayers, from a quivering shaky faith, from the father and the mother's ache. Nevermore, nevermore, nevermore. Now rejoicing, rejoicing, infinite rejoicing across the universe. All right, so that was the first poem. And I'll probably be doing this in several different parts, couple sittings, just to want to cover a lot of work, basically. About 10 years ago, I did a poetry reading. It was an in-person event, and I thought about doing another one recently again and having like a public reading and inviting people, but there were variables I really couldn't control, like how many people would show up, doing the invitation, getting a place, which I could have done, but then I wanted to get like coffee and donuts and all this stuff, and didn't really. I stopped thinking about that, and then had a moment of inspiration and thought, well, I'll just do it in recording and send it off to some people. So we'll go ahead and get started with this next poem, which I really don't know if it's a poem. It's more of almost like an essay, short story. I can't overstate the significance. I can't overstate the significance that this poem had on my life. It came from a letter that was sent to a friend. It's called Emancipation of the Soul. The letter was the first thing that I had ever written outside of schoolwork. And people talk about triggers. Well, it triggered something very positive in me, is that it started kind of a writing career that has been going on now for 23 years. And this poem is about being harmed as a child. It's called Emancipation of the Soul, Alternative Take. I blew out the candles after the lights went out, and the song was sung, and ate cake and ice cream laughing all over my face. There were presents wrapping concealed toys and photographs taken as I proudly shredded into them. My brother right beside me, and we played games with the neighborhood children. My mother answered a phone call to learn that my great-grandmother, Catsy, died suddenly. It was the last gift that she gave. After our children's games ended, after I napped big-bellied, my mother needed to find her mother, and my father needed to be by his wife, and it was decided my brother and sister would go along because they were old enough. But I had such a happy day and was so young, death had not yet been explained, so I needed a sitter, and he was not a family member. And now I know he was something of a nightmare, but all bad dreams eventually see the light of day. My personality change and rage was evidence. It flared boiling molten in public, and it was more than an occasional tantrum. It was a dark winter furnace fury at home, but my mother withstood its blaze. Perplexed, she would wrap me in her arms and carry me to my room while I kicked and screamed and cried and yelled, "I hate you, I wish you weren't my mother." I started to behave when I escaped into reading, but then I turned my anger, which was someone else's violence, inward, and that's when I really started to hurt. I withdrew so slowly that withdrawal became part of my personality. During the summer that I was 16, on vacation in Florida, we had dinner with him and his wife. He was a friend of my dad, and he continued to be far too long. I shook his hand when we met again, and he looked confused and scared. It was the daze in his eyes and the tense of his face. We ate and left, and that October I dropped out of high school. I broke and fell and sank and drowned. I was a dusky husk with wind blowing through it. Once remembering and spilling tears, my mother said, "You said, 'Mom, I'm losing myself.'" I had my vast glimpse of my 6th birthday, and I can close my eyes and see the inside of his house, except for the colors of the carpets, but I don't do that anymore. Last summer, on a typical hot Kentucky day, after I received love and care and counseling, he called my father at his office in town. He left a message and wanted to know if we could do dinner. And James Baldwin once wrote, "The very time I thought I was lost, my dungeon shook and my chains fell off." Chains of fear, eroded self-perception, irrational guilt, chains of shame and of anger tightened one last time, and it was such a wonderful day with the sun blazing and the humidity. My father and I sat on the deck outside on a swing, just swaying back and forth, catching a slight wind of warm air. I vowed not to fling accusations before I called, which would lead to a circular argument. This man would not be calling upon me or my family again. "Is Herb there?" "Yes, hold on. May I ask who's calling?" "This is Eric Cecil." My voice was calm. I did not want my emotions to betray me. "Hello, this is Herb." "This is Eric Cecil." "Oh, hi Eric, how have you been?" The nerve to ask about my well-being awakened my rage, which would be momentarily exercised. It threatened to slice the cordless telephone line in half. "I'm fine, but it has occurred to me that you and I need to talk. When I say this, I am speaking on behalf of my father as well as myself. We don't want to have anything to do with you. You are not to contact us again. We do not want you to write or call." As cool as an October day, he said, "I am trying to call Dave Cecil, an old neighbor friend of mine." My voice pitched. "This is his son, Eric." He sounded as if he had been told he had terminal cancer. "You all don't want anything to do with us." "Yes, that's right." "Okay." Click. It took less than a minute. There was no why, because we both knew why. So, yes, so the way that I felt that day was a great sense of relief and peace, and it was really something that I had been missing. And I went into my last year in college and, like I said, started writing because talking to that man and kind of standing up and ending things the way that I wanted to end them was redemptive to me in the sense that it was an end and a new beginning. I graduated college in 2002. I really didn't know how to write poetry. I had to kind of figure that out. And one night I was writing, it was probably 1 o'clock in the morning, and this was before I got sober. And I had written a very long poem, and I looked at it and I was like, this does not work. And I was disgusted, and I kind of ripped it and threw it in the trash. And a few minutes later, I got it out of the trash, and I looked at it again, and I saw like 3 or 4 poems that just jumped out at me. And I can remember that night going to bed, and it's like, you know, I've got all these ideas going on. And from that point forward, I start going into hypomania, which will lead to a manic episode. You can kind of hear the manic episode, not the manic episode, but the mania here with this writing. I love this writing. I think it starts off a little sad, but it also changes into a little lighthearted, and it kind of has its own little mood swing in it. But I just have always loved this writing. It's called Miles Behind. They'll never see you. They'll never see you like that, no matter how much you want they to be we. We as in encompassing. We as in humanity. We as in a sentence, live on this earth. They'll never see the 2 scars underneath your chin, the scar on your knee, the scar on your thigh, and they don't care about the broken collarbone and 2 broken permanent front teeth in the first week of 6th grade. And they weren't there for the Cracker Jack peanut you put up your nose, or in the emergency room on Mother's Day when you hit your head on the Oldsmobile's ashtray, or for the soccer ball that hit that popsicle stick dead on that you found on the ground and put in your mouth. And they don't care that the doctor said to your mother that if someone had a little more leg, you would have died spitting blood. And they'll never see your tattoo or know that your face flushed paste as that needle buzzed the outline, cutting into your stomach, coloring in the design. They weren't there when you were waist high to hear your father tell you to shoot for the stars or you'll never reach the moon, or hear your mother tell you that if you don't take a stand now, you'll be running for the rest of your life. They'll never know who turned up on your house on a Friday night in a black Impala to give you courage, or how long it took you to decide to burn your and their Greek letters in party shirts so you could gain back your self-respect while choking on the smoke, not knowing where you go back to school or work until you went back to school. They don't know what it felt like to see your name in the newspaper article sitting on the table in Kroger's break room, or how exhausting it was to have your life picked apart for 4.5 hours by 8 lawyers who were only doing their jobs. They weren't there with you sitting in that soft tan limousine middle seat with your brother riding beside you, his arm around you while you looked out empty at the windows of the businesses on Barstown Road with your tears miles behind. And they weren't there when you played that same role at your uncle's funeral 5 years later, 5 years to the exact day, 5 feet away from your sister's grave, leaving behind your red rose. And when they tell you what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, remember to tell them. That's what they say. Because you know from sorrows and losses, there is always a choice to become a bitter person or a better person, which depends entirely upon your reflections. They'll criticize you for your honesty and openness with their stares and silence, with their repeated questions and politeness. They'll tell you that you would be a good speechwriter if you just tone down the emotion and use punctuation right before you tell them you don't know the first thing about writing because you flunked your last writing class 2.5 years ago, drunk as a blown month's rent with your hand and hangover around a Maker's Mark bottle. They'll never know that you think Sarah Bonds has the most beautiful voice, or that Pat Martino's "We'll Be Together Again" is the slowest, sexiest jazz you've heard. And they'll think that you're crazy because you honestly believe that the best 5 minutes of acting on the silver screen came from Sylvester Stallone in Rambo First Blood in the second to last scene when Troutman says, "It's over, Johnny, it's over." They'll never know that you and a friend have fictional fans from your all's fictional band named the Freewheelin' Man and the Strong Arm Cease, and you don't write lyrics, and during rehearsals you only play the air drums, while the Freewheelin' Man's band only covers the first few lines of a few 80s songs that get sung like Robert Plant, feeling half dead, just rolled out of bed, smoking a cigarette, looking for a glass of water. They'll never know that when you invented the fist of peace, you were making fun of a flagrant racist who touches knuckles with everyone except half his brothers, or that sometimes when you proofread, you pace in circles, and it's doubtful if they'll ever know that imagination, which makes the world spin, also runs over you, and that is a blessing and a curse. They won't see and won't know your hopes and fears, your dreams and insecurities, the tears and blood you shed and spilled in yesteryears. And even then, you still want they to be we. We as in unity. We as in a sentence live together. We as a people will love each other, and we will make the changes necessary so that we, as human beings, can one day barter peaceful solutions to the problems we all face. All right. And this is another one called Sunflowers from that summer of 2002. It's called Sunflowers. I have tried to do this many times on different occasions in the years apart, but I have never found the words, my sister, sweet Molly. I am going to try to find the courage just one more time, and I know you will lead me, for I remember a certain promise you made moaning, while I asked crying. Night has fallen. Outside it's warm middle May, and a young boy who over the past 3.5 years has become a man, has seen suffering, comes to his sister's bedside in the family room. Furniture has been rearranged to make room for the hospital bed, and she is peaceful, with closed, darkened, sunken eyes that were once treasures, but now she is no longer able to eat, and hasn't for close to 1 week, and her face is gaunt, her arms are delicate twigs, and her close friends, her boyfriend, and her family all know, but haven't begun to try to understand. It will not be much longer. So they are gathered at her home, at her mother's home, at her younger brother's home, at that young man's, her youngest brother's home. Yesterday I met Mom, Granny, and Granddad at your graveside. Granddad stayed in the car in pain, but in surprisingly good spirits. And Mom walked Granny using her arm to support her. Granny walked around a little while I watered your thirsty flowers at the base of your black stone. I sat down on the July brown grass as Mom and Granny sang Happy Birthday. They just looked at each other and started to sing on time, as if first counting in, and then Granny saw the sun carved into your stone, and Mom said, Remember, Mother, she had that tattoo of a sun. And Granny said, Where? As she felt above her left breast. That's right, and Eric has a son also. Where? And I lifted up my shirt and showed her my middle right stomach. I walked Granny back to the car as I heard Mom crying. The mother of that young woman is exhausted, as any mother would be, watching her daughter, her child, her first child, her only daughter, linger for so long. The nights had been full of horror for her and for the loves of that young woman. A few nights before, the father of that young woman was awakened late. He set down the phone and woke his two sons, and those three men came over fast, and all watched waiting as she convulsed, all helpless, all under the unwavering glow of God, whose love is not helpless. Weeks before, when she was screaming in the still of the night, awakening her youngest brother, who is a sound sleeper, she cried to God to make it stop, and her mother cried the same, and it has. Now the mother is at her end. The loves of that young woman are drinking beer to kill their pain. But some pain only ends with time and tears and lots of both. Some pain will never go away. The time has come for them to leave. This is our time. I'm sorry, but this is our time. A dear friend who would later do an unforgettable favor asks the mother with all sincerity if he can stay in the garage. No, I'm sorry. They leave one by one, and the boyfriend, who is more than just a boyfriend, stays, and has stayed the nights and days before, because he loves her in a way indescribable except between him and her. I got Granny in the car and slowed down my step a little, because I know it's best to cry alone sometimes. So when I got back to Mom, I put my hand on her back and she turned. We hugged and she cried a little on my shoulder. While she did that, I felt my eyes burn in water, but nothing spilled down my face. It's been a while. We walked around the cemetery, looked at stones, and Mom showed me where she is going to be buried and Dad will rest next to you. We left shortly after our walk. Molly, I still think you're beautiful. Love you, babe. Eric. The young man sits alone at his sister's bedside. It's not too late in the night, and the father, mother, brother, and boyfriend wait in another room or outside on the deck. There is one light on with a low wattage bulb burning. Some light music is playing, and it's Pachelbel. The young man takes his sister's hand to begin putting lotion on her hand and arm. It's Elizabeth Arden's sunflowers, and in years to come, when he smells that lotion, he will forever think of her. He stops, is grim and worried, but that worry will be over soon. He looks at her and begins crying. It's not the first and will not be the last time or the loudest. But he cries and cries and cries, which he wipes away with a tissue from the box by her bed. He begins talking to her, not knowing if she can hear him or has the strength left to hear him. He talks anyway and tells her things from his heart that is running down in floods. He thinks he will be without a sister, yet he is wrong. He holds his hand, squeezes, and she knows. He asks her if she will promise to watch over him. Her closed eyes slightly stir, and she slightly moans, moving her head ever so slightly while he stays at her bedside and talks and cries a little while longer. My throat went a little dry on that one. Okay. So I do have some books that I have published. This is A Train Blues. I wrote this I wrote it between August of 2001 and published it in 2006. And a lot of it says A-Train Blues, Eric Cecil becomes the haunted voice of America. Lost in the ashes of September 11th, 2001. Politically observant and painstakingly autobiographical, Cecil works out the hopes and dreams of humanity in memory of Martin Luther King Jr., in conscience alone, and discovers the Word of God. Through a journey of madness and heartache, hope remains. I still believe that even from smoldering ashes on earth, that love will ascend to the throne of the moral universe and peace will reign. So that was in 2006, and this is God's Children. Says Eric Cecil explores being a consumer, advocating for social justice in the mental health field. God's Children links the spiritual health of community, country, and world to the recovery of men and women living in the mental health system, illustrated in such poems as Plight, Sunday Morning Rambling Blues, Advocate, and God's Children, an unforgettable autobiographical look at severe mental illness. God's Children offers hope for those suffering from it. Okay, now this is a very, very interesting book. It is called The Lifting of the Veil, which, unbeknownst to most, the word apocalypse actually means the lifting of the veil, meaning that something is hidden from humanity, and it's revealed. God reveals it. So this offers something new as far as a new conception of God. It's very interesting. This is the Song of the Spirit. This actually, to me, is a very, very dangerous book for several reasons, a lot of reasons. So much so that on the back of it, I didn't put anything about what the book is about. Instead, I wrote a poem called Hallelujah, and I'll read it to you now on the back. Hallelujah for Charlotte. Run to me, take my hand, dance with me, in hearts needing love. Pray for a new start. Love like children who never choose sides, with only joy to cry, without our tears to hide. The Spirit sings, she sings to you. Can you hear the music playing for you? So that is the Song of the Spirit. The Lifting of the Veil was published in 2013. The Song of the Spirit was published in 2017. This Love and Nothing Else was published in 2024. These are all self-published. You can find these works at cecilpublishing.com. That's the website where you can find them. There's links to buy them on Amazon. This book, Eric Cecil leaves the past behind and writes about his life as a husband and father in Love and Nothing Else. This is an intimate book beginning with dating his wife, moving through courtship to having children. In part 2, Cecil offers poems that are observant of the state of humanity while he hopes for peace. This book of simple poems is hopeful and lyrical with highlights such as Valentine's Day Letter, Sunbeams, and The Spring. This is a welcome addition to Cecil's previous 4 books as he looks to the future guided by love and nothing else. So those are the 5 books. Now, as I said, back in the summer of 2002, I started to head towards a manic episode, which I did have in October, and that was right now going on about 22 years ago. So here is what happened in this poem. This poem is called Justice for the Mentally Ill. First page, or maybe section C, Metro, page 3. Half a page down, in black and white, And I haven't read the article about the young man with the manic mind who took the police on a drive, speeding through the dead of night at more than 100 miles per hour, without any headlights on for more than 30 miles, weaving through a wall of fog, and I wasn't there when he stopped his car, and I wasn't standing in the line of fire that was never shot, before he was dragged from his car, thrown down to the pavement with a knee in the back, handcuffed, put in the back of a Lincoln Cruiser, and taken to jail, where he spent 36 hours having horrific visions of hell, describing horror of indescribed horror, pale bloated bodies, and black running blood and torture. But I have heard that on his ride of insanity, at the doorway to death, and past the gates of perdition, that he was protected by the angels of God. I wasn't there 3 months later, I wasn't there months later, sitting in a pew among the accused, some dressed in orange and white horizontal striped jumpsuits, wearing handcuffs and leg shackles that occasionally rattled unheard in the courtroom, under the talk of prosecutors, paid lawyers, the public defender, and the occasional state trooper gathered around one cluttered table, shuffling each other's papers, smiling, laughing, and shaking hands until the judge walked in, wearing his usual black robe, to sit in his usual black chair. I have no way of knowing this because I wasn't there, but I heard that by noon the judge fell asleep. Not hearing 4 words of the preliminary hearing, with years of experience, as if cued from a dream, awakening from his judicial slumber, his right hand caressing the gavel, the judge agreed to advance the case to the circuit court. That young man, out on bond, feeling alive, and at the same time as if he'd been dragged behind a mule from his crapshoot with death, somehow laughs a little, manages a smile, and says, "Miss Blind and Wise, draped in white, I'm a child of love. It was my broken mind, not my spirit, that committed my charged crimes." So, someone who has bipolar disorder or really any mental illness, who at the same time is going to use substances such as I was using, alcohol and marijuana, is inevitably going to have some type of psychotic episode. It's a foregone conclusion. It was for me. It was not the first time that I ended up in an institution. I was in a hospital when I was 16, 19. I was diagnosed when I was 23. I was hospitalized for the last time when I was 25. And that hospitalization coincided with having my last drink of alcohol and using my last drug. Since then, I've been sober and began to rebuild my life. So that was in October of 2002. Mania, for me, I have bipolar type 1, which is marked by manic episode with, I have psychotic features, whatever. Another way to think of it is I have an overactive imagination, is a gentle way to think of mania. But it automatically, for me, goes into depression. And I became depressed in January 1st through January 1st, 2003 through April 1st of 2003, which is about 4 months. It was during this time that I was not able to function very well at all. There were a lot of factors going into my depression. I was living at home in my dad's basement. I did not have a job. I did not have any money. There was a girl, of course, that I was interested in, and that was some unrequited love or whatever. Then there was the court case. They said that I could possibly go to prison for 2 years. And there was also the fact that I had almost, through my manic episode, ran off the road some state troopers, endangered everyone's lives that were on the highway that night, and I was getting sober and going through that. And for me, the pain was so great. The pain was so great that I used to lie in bed at night during this period and think about all these things while I was going to bed. And the only thing to do was lie there and moan. And looking back on that, I would not say at that time any of that was very good. But that kind of pain had the velocity to carry me into recovery, and I was able to, it literally brought me to my knees and asked God for help. And, I don't know about other people who don't have uh, those type of factors or don't have those diagnoses or pain or whatever, but I don't know if they have that kind of pain. I'm sure everyone has that. I'm just rambling here, thinking about the Hemingway quote that says something to the effect that the world breaks everyone, and afterwards many are strong in the broken places, and um, that certainly happened to me. But this poem signifies that depression, which was January 1st through April 1st, 2003. All right. Tossing, turning, and cradling in the wake of depression. It comes in the morning as sunlight eases into my bed, temporarily awakening me before I turn over and sleep till noon. In my covers and underwear, I turn my aching stare. Outside as another empty afternoon goes by, beneath an ocean-capped sky, and the sun hangs high, blinding my bloodshot eyes while I feel threadbare worn through and beaten like a cheap rug that had been thrown down on trampled ground. Unable to fall back to sleep, I leave the safety of my twisted blue sheets and shuffle like a weak, wrinkled man into the laundry-littered bathroom, stand bare-chested, half-clad in cotton boxer briefs as I look into a mirror, searching my haunted eyes before brushing my teeth. I spit in the sink and all over the faucet, turn off the cold water knob, pull myself out of the mirror, walk back into my bedroom and search for my red and green plaid bathrobe, and slip into a pair of never-used black dress shoes, and open the back glass porch door and cough on the day's first inhale of nicotine, feeling skin and bones, lightheaded, pale, and green. I come back inside after throwing my smoldering cigarette aside, and it misses the half-filled coffee can. I kick off my black dress shoes, walk woozy, measuring my steps back to the bathroom, feel hopeless as I undress, throwing my underwear in a pile, and I test the water before I step into the shower and try to wash away yesterday. I step out dripping beads of water and feel chilled like a dead fish on ice as I pick up a towel from the floor, dry, and walk naked into my bedroom to find a clean pair of black underwear and pick up yesterday and tomorrow's blue jeans while I look for a sweater that will hold me warm against the weather, and I'm dressed, and it's not yet 1 in the afternoon. I carry my weight up dark carpeted stairs, open a cabinet, pull out a chipped white bowl, pour some cereal and milk for breakfast, or is it lunch? I walk into the television room, and there's nowhere to be all day long, and tomorrow will be the same, because I'm unwanted for hire and poor without coin. So I sit down without a light on and turn on the television and my shrouded imagination. Today there will be no resurrection. As I watch the war news, I'm confused and let down by man-made leaders, but I watch obsessively. Outside, the blue sky begins to rage. The air has changed and it's turning into the coldest rain. While I exhale, trimming my lips, I close my eyes, unable to hide or move, feeling so inescapably blue. As I remember the past, my thoughts jump into and slide through the nonstop tick-tock of a brass chime clock. As I envision countless fallen faces that have drifted away like white wind caressed wilted petals. And as I remember a fading conversation, a lone tear trails down my face. In a lazy boy chair, I fight for my life, which is devoid of an ounce of joy, and I feel run down from wasting time, from doing nothing, but I sit still and baby rock a little, while I chew my shirt and bite my lip. An anguished moan escapes my withering soul, and nothing will ever change. My diagnosis is not unclear, but terminal. And finally, I've been broken down, and it's a little past 2 in the afternoon before I wonder if I can get through another day while I distantly smile and wipe away another tear. These are all from A-Train Blues, pretty much. One thing that did come out of the manic episode, well, a lot of things actually, is a theory, I guess you could call it, on violence. The way that I was thinking in that manic episode, I, for whatever reason, put violence into an algebraic equation. So I will show that to you now, and then I will talk about it in this next writing. And once I do that, well, I'll take a break, and I'll probably pick this up on another day as far as reading and recording, and finish or continue to go on from there. Here is, I'll tell you the algebraic equation dealing with violence and then explain it. If you can just imagine, it's V plus V equals 2V equals 2VT. V stands for violence and T equals time. This is what it looks like. I hope you can see it. It's V plus V equals 2V equals 2VT. Violence plus violence equals violence multiplies violence equals violence multiplies violence over time. It deals with the start of the violence, the intensity of the violence, the intensity and the duration of violence. So I will read my sort of explanation or theory a little bit more in depth here, and then call it a night. I titled this one Theoretical Violence. That's kind of the name of the equation there. I constructed a theory years ago that I failed to elaborate on because I believed that it was self-evident and rather simple to grasp. It explains why violence can never achieve peace. This theory also helps explain why violence has defeated human institutions, such as governments, churches, mosques, temples, and charitable organizations. I stated this theory, which is a true statement, as V plus V equals 2V equals 2VT. V represents violence, and T represents time. The Judeo-Christian tradition will refer to this as you reap what you sow. Hindus and Buddhists might refer to this theory as the law of karma. Most scientists and religious experts will agree that there is an underlying intelligence governing the universe through laws. Theoretical violence indicates that violence is an energy that cannot be controlled, predicted, or harnessed. This theory indicates that violence grows more powerful with the passing of time when it is not balanced by its opposite force. Einstein said, "Energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only be changed from one form to another." This infers that violence has been constant throughout human history. I, however, believe that the energy of violence has increased, has transformed its opposite energy, thus destroying that opposite energy into more violence. So it's important to look at the role that time has in creating more violence. Time is a stable variable. In its natural state, it is neutral. It progresses constantly without regard to humanity. The reason the energy of violence has increased is because violence leaves a wake of bitterness, fear, anger, and hatred. These unresolved emotions over time have created more violence, which has led to the ineffectiveness of human institutions to achieve peace among people and nations. Looking at the whole of human history, it is possible that violence once served as a means to correct social problems. Perhaps violence was a viable solution. We see this in various religions when war was ordered because it was believed to be God's will. Examples are found in the Bible, and it was on the battlefield that Arjuna conversed with Krishna. However, sometime in human history, the consequences of violence began to outweigh the benefits of using violence. When this occurred, as it has, V plus V equals 2V equals 2VT began to add other variables. The belief that violence solves social problems continued because it once had. This delusion persisted because many people failed to recognize that violence multiplies over time. Most failed to realize that the positive results that violence once brought had changed or were temporary and short-lived. When violence changed from solution to problem is unknown, but it will never change back into a means for positive social change. This change possibly occurred because society became more complex, population too great, or technology became more advanced. Violence persisted, time progressed, violence multiplied, and social problems became more difficult to solve. War eroded social institutions that were meant to balance the energy of violence, as humanity began to invest more time and energy into the institution of violence than into the institutions that promote social progress through nonviolent means. What is troubling at present is that violence has progressed past the point that human institutions can counterbalance its energy. I acknowledge that nonviolence has lost. Defeat complete. To strengthen my conclusion, the world's most recent Nobel Peace Prize winner stated in his acceptance speech that we must begin to acknowledge the hard truth that we will not eradicate violent conflict in our lifetimes. Violence and war has expanded its influence into every aspect of society. In an age of nuclear weapons, there is not another lifetime in which to strengthen our institutions of peace. Peace has not the time left or the institutional support to counterbalance violence. The war on terrorism is like no other war, cannot possibly be won by either side, which holds the surety of destruction of humanity. In previous wars, combatants have always traded lives for land, but there is no land to win. Bitterness and fear breeds, anger rises, and the energy for sustained violence has been achieved. It is by this means that violence has won. Yet by this admission, humanity will move forward, for victory is in surrender. The energy of love is as sure as the energy of violence. Because our human institutions have been defeated, it is through the grace of the creator of all energy that peace will come. Love will create a window of opportunity to heal our unresolved emotions that violence has wounded humanity with. Peace will be sustained by realizing that it is better to give our resources than to let war take our resources. It is easier to give bread to the hungry than to feed an army. It is less costly to give medicine to the sick than to care for the maimed. It is greater to house the homeless than to destroy communities. It is more sensible to educate the illiterate than suffer from minds of ignorance. We will rebuild our fragmented world, mindful that we can only be as healthy as the sick, as wealthy as the poor, as cared for as the elderly, as loved as the mentally ill, as consoled as the crying, and as peaceful as the restless. We will build upon our similarities and work for the common dreams we have for children. There is no separation between us. The borders on maps are only in our minds. Humanity has one destiny, guided by one spirituality, as the same breath of love lives within us all. There is mercy that realizes humanity is overwhelmed by the power of violence and can only be saved by the love of God, by loving each other. All right. Thank you all for hopefully listening, giving me some time to do that. I appreciate it. We'll see each other again.